You. What up? Okay, just doing a mic check. Welcome to another episode of the Jokatech podcast. It's been a while. I was questioning what the content of this episode was going to be. I wasn't sure when I was going to do it. I had a lot going on. But there's a couple events coming up. I just finished watching Danny Garcia's destruction of Adrian Granados. I thought I had seen that, but I guess I missed that on the 20th of April. Maybe I saw it and I just forgot. Maybe I saw the highlights. I forgot it ended in a knockout, but he was surgical towards the end, but he showed a lot of flaws early on that had people questioning his pedigree. Overly so, in my opinion. But aside from that, then you have the whole heavyweight situation going on. But before I get to that, I just wanted to say I was looking at the sales figures for the Nintendo Switch, and a couple of things stand out to me. Now, you look at the worldwide sales. Pulling it up now. So far, it looks like it has 34.7 million units sold, 187 million software units sold. Which the numbers are staggering because it's only been out under 2 years or whatever the case is. So the sales figures are, looking at, let's say 2 year sales figures. Lifetime. The DS had, I think, 75 units, almost 400 software units sold. The reason why I bring up the DS because that's pretty much the benchmark. The Nintendo DS sold more than any console in the history of video games. And to this day, I don't agree with that. I owned the Nintendo DS when it launched. Not when it launched, I'm sorry. I bought one a couple of years afterwards because they were a hoax. And the fact that they really didn't bring what they advertised. That was the first time in the history of handheld gaming that Nintendo kind of tried to dupe the public and use their reputation to get ahead. And Sony actually delivered, contrary to their reputation for being snakes. But I remember buying the PSP at launch, and it was a last second decision because I was going back and forth between the two consoles, and I said, you know what? I just have a gut feeling that the PSP is a better console, and it was. Unfortunately, the sales don't reflect that, but because of name association, and familiarity control the way people purchase and the way people view things and review things. Everyone remembers the DS phone. I can tell you about maybe 5 titles most that I owned or played on the DS that were actually noteworthy. Most titles were garbage, technically and aesthetically. But because of the name association, it's Nintendo, it's Mario, it's Pokemon, etc., it flourished. And it didn't just flourish. Best-selling console of all time, meaning it even trumps the PS2, which comes in at second, and it's at a far second. And the PS2, as you know, had awesome success and a long life. So the reason why I bring this up is because I'm looking at these sales, and to me, I feel like there's a lot of disparaging going on with the Switch because it's the only handheld. Handhelds that really excel technically, they tend to get trashed because, like I was just mentioning to someone the other day, people base everything on what they know. Nintendo really instilled and branded in the minds of consumers that handhelds are supposed to be inferior, very minimalistic, and weak. They're supposed to give you bare bones titles that don't look very good. So when handhelds started coming on the scene, going back to the Nokia Engage or the Neo Geo Pocket, the constant reception has been, what's this abomination? Why are they trying to make these games look good? We'd rather have a console, which I never understood. But unfortunately, it looks like the Switch is bearing some of that brunt. If you look at it, the floor belongs to Nintendo now. There's no other handheld console on the market. Sony's died, and Microsoft has yet to enter the party. So literally, Nintendo has had the floor for the last couple of years and going forward. But all you hear in the reviews are, well, if you look at it and compare it to the 4K systems or the PCs games that are coming out, it's not quite technical enough. And I'm like, are you serious? The fact that you have to split hairs to show the differences between a PC port that was released on the Switch automatically kills the argument. You're talking about something that's portable, that can be played handheld or in dock mode, and it's almost an exact representation of a PC game that came out recently? That's ridiculous. But honestly, I feel like it's the best console to ever come out. So I'm really a Switch fan at this point. We'll see what they do in the future. I think title-wise, they're doing a really good job with their releases. They're releasing every single title and port that's necessary for a complete library. Already, there's a big enough library on the Switch that you can have 5 people that have huge libraries and not even have the same games. And all the games will be good. That's the mark of a successful console. So I just wanted to get into that real quick because I think that's worthy of mention. Nintendo's done a very good job, and they have to because they put all their eggs in a basket and they're banking on this console. It's their last one. Now on to sport.
Mile for raid.
I've been watching really a lot of World Cup soccer, actually. There's been some really good games. I think I've actually enjoyed watching USA, believe it or not. They acquired talent to the point where they're very competitive no matter what. Definitely some really good games. Korea even looked good in the game that I saw with them. So the World Cup's been pretty good thus far. But when it comes to boxing, man, the heavyweight situation is still exasperating itself. Everybody's on a different network. You got the 2 British top heavyweights that want to come over stateside because now they want to build their brand. So Tyson Fury comes, and now Anthony Joshua is coming over. And you still have this fear that Deontay Wilder just reverberates in the hearts of all these guys. What I find funny is Andy Ruiz was one of the guys who used to disparage Deontay Wilder from the shadows. Him and Big Baby. And I used to say, why don't these guys call Deontay out and fight him? And Dillian White. None of them wanted any parts of him. But now, for some reason, Joshua seems to bring these people up. My thing is this. As much as I don't like the cowardice of Anthony Joshua, I definitely believe people are forgetting he's just about as dangerous as Deontay Wilder. He doesn't have the confidence to face Deontay because even though he poses a threat, he doesn't like the threat posed back at him. But he's very much as dangerous as Deontay, just about. He's not as wild. He's not gonna come at you with the same knockout intent as Deontay for 12 straight rounds. That's one of the major differences. But power wise and the ability to put people away, he actually has a higher KO percentage. He's the only person with a higher KO percentage than Deontay. But you would never know that by the way the media spins it. But he's a threat. But I think everyone's so busy running from Deontay, they're running to Joshua, and it's like running into a wood chipper because Ruiz, now he's gained all this confidence. He wants to be the champion now. As long as he's facing Joshua and not Wilder. He doesn't realize he's going to face the same exact results. Now, Deontay will embarrass him more. But Joshua is going to brutalize him. And I always thought Andy Ruiz was a good fighter, too. He has good technique, good movement for a heavyweight, excellent stamina. He fights with that Mexican style, but he can also be very technical as well. I saw him put some fighters away back in the day. He has a lot of power. He only has one loss on his record. But he just disappeared for a period of time. And I'm like, where's this guy at? Why doesn't he step up and face Deontay or something? None of these guys want anything to do with Deontay. So now he's fighting Joshua and Ruiz. And now Ortiz is fighting Wilder again, which should be an interesting rematch. But really, they need to just get this Wilder-Joshua card going. I don't know if there's fear in both directions, and I don't know if there's confidence in both directions. I think it's a little one-sided. I think Deontay's kind of exhausted in pulling for the fight, and I think there's a little fear on Joshua's side. Joshua is dangerous. I think his confidence kind of ebbs and flows. There's times where he really feels like he's the number one when his adrenaline's flowing. But then when he settles down, he realizes, okay, I don't want to get in there with Deontay. And that's the problem. Stop blaming the promoters. There's a little fear in his heart. So, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with that? That division's pretty much tied up. There's not really a lot of matches. Stephen A. Smith kind of put it well when he said, you guys have run out of opponents. You run out of options. You have to face each other at this point. And it's true. At this point, what are you going to keep having rematches? Johnny Nelson says it's important for us to be patient as fans and realize that they have to go through some of their mandatories and some of these rematches that people want to see, and eventually they're going to get to each other. You can only run through that so much. Yes, the Fury-Wilder fight, that's a fine rematch. If you want to make that rematch, okay. Aside from that, I don't really care anymore about Ortiz. And I don't want to see Joshua fight Ortiz either. Stop finding excuses. The next fight after this has to beat each other. They're only getting older. And then you have Keith One-Time Thurman, who's taking on Pacquiao. That I didn't see coming. As a fan of both of them, I don't know. I find that I don't like Keith Thurman as much these days because I was a huge Keith Thurman fan because I like how intellectual he is. Same thing with Paulie Malignaggi. I like how intellectual they are. They're very cerebral, and I like to see fighters translate that into the ring. But the way he kind of kept deferring from Errol Spence, and now when he's facing Pacquiao, he's got his chest out. And he's talking all these things about ending Pacquiao's career and this boy thinks he belongs in there with me. I'm going to put this boy to sleep. I'm like, where was that bravado with Errol Spence? Pacquiao's not even a trash talker, and you're coming at Pacquiao super hard. Errol Spence has come at you time and time again, and you keep on stepping to the left. Until he gets past that, I can't respect Keith Thurman like that anymore. You took care of some dangerous dudes in the division. You took care of Danny Garcia. A lot of people don't even want to step in there with him. You took care of him easily. You took care of Sean Porter easy. Took care of Guerrero. You took care of a lot of these dangerous dudes. Collazo, I think he fought as well. A lot of guys that people don't even want to fight. Keith Thurman just went in there, just wiped these dudes out. He really was in position to kind of be that next Mayweather. Undefeated. Everybody that's a top level fighter, when they run into him, they run into defeat. That's a good look. But then all of a sudden, as soon as Errol Spence started making his bid and climbing up in the rankings, oh, I got to get healthy first. It's going to happen. Just give it time. Like, come on, bro. You need to face Errol or you need to face Terrence Crawford. But right now, I want to see Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence face each other, because there's nothing I like more than when two upstarts cancel each other out. Both of them are I don't want to say hype jobs. They both have skill sets and they pose a threat, but both of them like to be opportunistic, especially Crawford. I mean, I'm not even going to get into his last fight, but he likes to get excess clout with minimal risk. He likes to pick a nice, good matchup and then get in there and then do what he's supposed to do and then act like it was, oh my goodness. The Amir Khan matchup was set. Amir Khan has good speed, but he's always going to be leery of the power shot. So coming in, Terrence Crawford, we know his power's translated up to 147 pretty good. So we knew that was a foregone conclusion. But you're going to sit there and act like you just climbed Mount Everest. You didn't do anything, bro. As a matter of fact, he was exposed to some extent because not a lot of people are calling it what it is. But in that fight, Amir Khan was getting the better of him on multiple occasions. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until Amir Khan started losing patience and lunging with his shots and leaving himself open and getting turned to his right often, that's when he started to get dismantled more. He didn't cold cock him. He didn't knock him out. He wasn't laid out. So, I mean, it is what it is. That's why I want to see him face Errol Spence so the two of them could just cancel each other out. Now, aside from that, then you have the bare knuckle scene. Now, another person I'm losing respect for is Paulie Malignaggi. Now, I've many times gone on record saying I would love to debate him because some of the things that he says and gets very vocal and animated in saying, I really dispute. I disputed him when it came to some of those close decisions like the Triple G Canelo fight, the Maypac fight, the Wilder Fury fight. I severely disagree with him. And I've gone on about that in my last podcast where I said, if you know how to look at a boxing match and you're saying there was a robbery, the Wilder Fury fight, you kind of exposed yourself right there. But really, what I've lost respect for Paulie with is his match. He's able to come back into bare knuckle boxing, and he's facing Artem Lobov, who's in Conor McGregor's camp. We all know he had a big fallout with Conor McGregor that caused a huge thing where media was involved and a tape was supposedly surfacing where he was getting beat around the ring by McGregor, and he's disputing that that's true. He says it's doctored footage and the whole thing was set up. I didn't agree with the way McGregor handled that situation because I think he would have benefited to have Paulie in his camp the entire time preparing for Mayweather. But the two of them had a falling out. Instead of fighting each other, they've gone back and forth through the media. Now he's taking shots at Artem. Artem is nothing more than just associated with Conor. That's it. But when you listen to Artem talk, the guy's a working class, likable guy. Very intellectual. And honestly, before I heard Artem even give an interview, I had a totally different impression from the way Paulie was disparaging him and ripping him down to the media and the press conferences and spitting in his face and attacking him. I'm thinking that, man, Artem must be like a real jerk on the side for Paulie to be doing that. And I come to find, really, a lot of that's fabricated. I know you need to sell a fight, but have some dignity, some class about you. Artem is a guy that it's really hard not to get behind him. There's no need for you to rip into the guy like that and make ridiculous coma threats and stuff like that. There's no need. He's not the class of fighter that deserves that. So all it's made me do is become more of an Artem fan. As a matter of fact, I'd like to hear some more interviews of him because for a guy that doesn't speak English as his first language, he's very articulate. And I would actually wager to say he's probably more intelligent than Paulie. And you would never know that. You would never think that because all you see is a guy who brawls a lot. And he's been in a lot of tough wars, and he doesn't talk a lot. But he's actually very intelligent, and he has a very wide base of knowledge. Not just combat, etc. He has a wide range of knowledge in a lot of things. So, the two of them are supposed to square off sometime early June or something. But I kind of want him to maybe not beat Paulie, but I want him to surprise Paulie because the way Paulie has disparaged him is just unnecessary. Artem's a guy that's trying to build his career back up from the bad record that he had in the UFC. And Paulie's kind of stifling that. Because really, Artem's one of those guys that he has a bad record. I think he's 14-17. But he's had a lot of tough matches. And he was actually explaining in an interview how a record can be deceiving. And how a lot of fighters, they chase after easy matchups and they get easy decisions to pad their records, but they're not really facing the best competition. And he went explaining some of his fights and the way he prepares and the way he brings it each and every time. And honestly, he really made a believer out of me because he really makes a really good case. He started talking about a lot of philosophical stuff like that, and he made a lot of sense. I was actually kind of expecting a more simplistic guy, but he's surprisingly deep, and he makes you really see that, his record doesn't really tell the class of fighter that he is. He already had one bare knuckle fight, and I went back to review it because I said, you know what? Let me see his technique, and let me see exactly what kind of threat he poses to Paulie. And you know what? Oddly enough, Artem's not flawless. He can be hittable, and I mean, you can see he is beatable to some extent. But the odd thing about him is every flaw that he has, Paulie has. And I honestly would not be shocked if he outboxes Paulie when they fight. But Paulie has to be careful because one thing I've always said about Paulie Malignaggi, he's not as good a boxer as he thinks he is. He held world titles, and Artem makes a very good point. He held them conveniently. And whenever he was faced with a stiff challenge, the only reason he didn't get knocked out was because he hid behind the jab and he stayed on defense and stayed on his bike to survive. And it's crazy because every single thing that Artem brings out, everything in his interviews, when you go and you actually analyze it, you kind of find that he's right. Not just about Paulie, but in general, the way business is handled in the UFC, the way fighters are marketed, everything. I'm like, this guy, why hasn't this guy done interviews before? So I really expect him to surprisingly outbox Paulie. I'm not making a bold prediction, but I just have a hint. I really have a hunch that's going to happen. And Paulie would deserve it because he's overlooking the guy. The guy has some talent. And any guy with intellect you have to respect. Because I always say, if you know the game is 85% mental. That's why if you know martial arts, if you know combat, you don't have to watch somebody's tapes or see someone in action. You can sit down and listen to them in conversation and you can tell what caliber of fighter they are. If you've watched enough, you can do that. Like I just watched his interviews and I'm like, you know what? This guy, he has some of the elements that are there. That's the reason why he's been competitive when he's faced some of the top guys. Even though he hasn't gotten the wins, he has the caliber to compete. So that should be an interesting matchup. And the Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao matchup, that I don't really know. I sort of expect Manny to get the knockout. And with all that bravado that Keith Thurman's coming with, it feels like he's setting himself up for that. But I know Keith, he's just a little too smart for that. He's going to prepare and he's going to find some way to make it uncomfortable for Manny. The only thing about Manny is every trainer will tell you there's really no clear way to prepare for him. When he's coming for you, I mean, they say it's a predictable style, but in the end, he has better movement than you expect and he adjusts better than you expect. And he's not as hittable as it seems. I know the main thing that Keith is going to be focusing on is speed, because that's the only thing that stands out to people when they think about Manny Pacquiao. Oh, I got to prepare for this really fast in and out style. But he actually has a really good jab. So we'll see what happens with that. And that's pretty much it as far as these matches go. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Got some new music to drop. Check me out on Spotify if you can. And stay tuned for the next episode of the Jokatech podcast.